some measure of honor. Instead, they found themselves processed through a system that seemed to operate by completely alien rules. While Japanese prisoners were grappling with their cultural crisis, American military authorities were implementing a POW system based on entirely different principles. The United States had signed the Geneva Convention of 1929, and despite the fact that Japan had not ratified the treaty, American policy was to treat all prisoners according to international standards. This wasn't just legal compliance, it was strategic thinking. American military leaders understood that word of proper treatment would encourage more surrenders, potentially saving American lives. They also recognized that Japanese prisoners, properly handled, could provide invaluable intelligence about enemy positions, tactics, and morale. But perhaps most importantly, treating prisoners humanely aligned with American values and provided a stark contrast to Axis brutality, a powerful propaganda tool in its own right. The logistics of this system were staggering. By 1945, the United States was housing over 425,000 prisoners of war in camps scattered across the continental United States. The vast majority were German and Italian, but several thousand were Japanese, mostly captured in the later stages of the Pacific Campaign as American forces closed in on Japan's home islands. These camps were a far cry from the brutal conditions that Allied prisoners faced in Japanese hands. American POW facilities were required to provide adequate housing, medical care, recreational opportunities, and, most relevantly to our story, nutritious meals that met or exceeded the rations provided to American troops. The irony was profound. Japanese prisoners in American camps were often eating better than Japanese civilians back home, who were suffering under increasingly severe wartime rationing. The initial processing of Japanese POWs revealed cultural gaps so vast they seemed almost comical, if they weren't so profound. Take the simple matter of the medical examination required for all incoming prisoners. American medics, following standard procedure, would strip prisoners for health inspections. For Japanese soldiers raised in a culture where public nudity was deeply shameful, this was often more traumatic than their capture itself. But it was the first meal that truly shattered preconceptions on both sides. American mess sergeants, following regulations, would pile standard military rations onto metal trays, portions calculated to provide 3,000, 4,000 calories per day for active servicemen. To put this in perspective, Japanese civilians by 1944 were surviving on roughly 1,500 calories per day, and frontline Japanese troops were often getting even less due to disrupted supply lines. Sergeant William Morrison, who served at the POW camp at Camp McCoy in Wisconsin, later recalled the bewilderment of newly arrived Japanese prisoners. They'd just stare at their trays like we were playing some kind of trick on them. Some would eat maybe a quarter of what we gave them and then stop, like they were afraid we'd punish them for taking too much. We had to keep explaining that this was their food, all of it, and there'd be more at the next meal. The cultural confusion went beyond mere quantity. American military cuisine, even in its institutional form, represented an abundance and variety that seemed almost fantastical to men accustomed to rice, pickled vegetables, and occasional fish. Beef was a luxury most Japanese soldiers had rarely tasted even before the war. Dairy products like butter and cheese were virtually unknown in traditional Japanese diets. Fresh fruits and vegetables, available year-round through America's vast agricultural system and preservation techniques, seemed to mock the seasonal scarcity that defined Japanese eating habits. Perhaps most disorienting of all was how this abundance contradicted everything Japanese soldiers had been told about their enemies. Japanese wartime propaganda had painted Americans as a soft, decadent people who would collapse under the pressure of real hardship. The narrative was that American wealth was built on exploitation and would crumble when tested by Japanese spiritual strength and military discipline. Yet here were these same soft Americans, not only defeating Japanese forces in battle after battle, but doing so while maintaining a level of material abundance that seemed to defy the very concept of wartime sacrifice. How could a nation provide such lavish meals to its enemies while simultaneously projecting military power across the Pacific? The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Private First Class Kenji Yamamoto, captured during the Battle for Saipan in 1944, later described his confusion in a post-war interview. "I had been taught that Americans were weak because they loved comfort too much. But if they could give such comfort even to their prisoners while still fighting so hard against us, what did that say about their strength? It made me question everything I thought I knew about this war." This questioning wasn't limited to military matters. Many Japanese prisoners began to wonder about the broader narratives they'd been fed about American society, about the war's purpose, and about their own government's truthfulness. If American propaganda about treating prisoners well turned out to be accurate, what about other American claims that had been dismissed as lies? As the initial shock wore off, Japanese POWs settled into routines that continued to challenge their preconceptions. American POW camps operated on schedules that seemed almost leisurely compared to the harsh discipline of Japanese military life. Prisoners were awakened at reasonable hours, fed 3 substantial meals per day, and given time for recreation, education, and even creative pursuits. The recreational opportunities were particularly bewildering. American authorities, following Geneva Convention guidelines, encouraged prisoners to organize sports, crafts, and educational activities. Japanese prisoners found themselves with access to books, musical instruments, and art supplies. Some camps even had small orchestras and theater groups. For men who had spent years in a military culture that valued only martial virtues, these soft activities initially seemed like elaborate humiliation. But gradually, many prisoners began to appreciate these opportunities. They started teaching each other skills that had nothing to do with warfare. Calligraphy, poetry, traditional crafts that connected them to a Japan that existed beyond the military machine. In a strange way, captivity began to restore parts of their humanity that years of military indoctrination had suppressed. The work details assigned to prisoners provided another source of cultural confusion. Geneva Convention rules required that prisoners be given meaningful work, but prohibited using them for direct war production. Many Japanese POWs found themselves working on farms, in food processing plants, or on construction projects that seemed to have nothing to do with the war effort. This was puzzling for men who had been taught that every aspect of life should serve the military. Here was an enemy nation that could apparently afford to use prisoner labor for non-essential tasks while still maintaining the industrial capacity to fight a global war. The implications were staggering. If America could waste prisoner labor on civilian projects, how vast must their overall resources be? From the American perspective, these well-fed, relatively comfortable prisoners represented an intelligence bonanza. Japanese military culture's emphasis on death before dishonor had an unintended consequence. Those who did survive to be captured often knew valuable information precisely because they weren't supposed to survive. Unlike German or Italian prisoners who might have been briefed on what to reveal if captured, Japanese soldiers had received no such training because capture was considered impossible. When faced with skilled American interrogators who treated them with respect and provided them with better living conditions than they'd known in years, many Japanese prisoners proved remarkably forthcoming. Major Robert Sherwood, an intelligence officer who worked with Japanese POWs in the Pacific, noted the paradox. The better we treated them, the more they talked. Not because they were betraying their country, but because they were trying to make sense of their situation. They'd ask us questions about America, about our war aims, about how we could afford to be so generous to prisoners. In trying to understand us, they'd reveal things about Japanese positions, morale, and strategy that we never could have gotten through harsh interrogation. This intelligence proved invaluable as American forces prepared for the final push toward Japan. Information about Japanese defensive preparations, troop dispositions, and civilian morale helped American planners understand what they would face in a potential invasion of the Japanese home islands. Ironically, the humane treatment of Japanese prisoners may have contributed to shortening the war and saving lives on both sides. As weeks turned to months in American captivity, many Japanese prisoners underwent profound psychological changes. The initial shame of capture gradually gave way to a more complex emotional landscape. Some prisoners began to question not just the war's conduct, but its fundamental premises. The contrast between their treatment as prisoners and the stories filtering back about Japanese treatment of Allied prisoners was impossible to ignore. Through carefully managed mail exchanges and Red Cross communications, some Japanese POWs learned about the brutal conditions in Japanese prison camps, the forced labor, the starvation, and the systematic abuse of Allied prisoners. This knowledge created a moral crisis for many. If their own forces were committing atrocities, while their enemies were providing humane treatment, what would that say about the righteousness of their cause? Some prisoners began to see their capture not as a shameful failure, but as a kind of salvation, both physical and spiritual. Dr. Takeshi Nakamura, a Japanese military physician captured in the Philippines, later wrote about his transformation. In that American camp, eating better food than I had known since childhood, reading books that had been forbidden in Japan, talking with guards who treated me as a human being rather than a number, I began to remember who I was before the war made me into a killing machine. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Word of the conditions in American POW camps began to filter back to Japanese forces still fighting in the Pacific, though not through official channels. Japanese military censors worked hard to suppress any information that might encourage surrender. But soldiers' talk and rumors spread, especially when they challenged fundamental assumptions. Some Japanese commanders noticed a subtle change in their troops' behavior as the war progressed. While outright surrender remained rare, there were increasing instances of soldiers allowing themselves to be captured while unconscious, or failing to destroy intelligence materials before being overrun. The absolute taboo against capture was beginning to crack, if only slightly. American psychological warfare specialists recognized this opportunity and began dropping leaflets on the Japanese positions that included photographs of well-fed Japanese prisoners and testimonials about their treatment. These surrender passes promised safe conduct and humane treatment to any Japanese soldier who chose to give up fighting. The effectiveness of these campaigns was limited by the deep cultural barriers to surrender, but they did plant seeds of doubt. For the first time in the war, some Japanese soldiers began to see surrender as a viable alternative to death. Honorable, perhaps, but not necessarily the ultimate shame we've been taught to believe. To truly understand the shock experienced by Japanese prisoners, we need to appreciate the broader context of American wartime abundance. While the United States certainly experienced rationing and shortages during World War II, these restrictions were mild compared to what most other combatant nations endured. American agricultural production actually increased during the war years, despite millions of farmers being drafted into military service. Mechanization, improved fertilizers, and scientific farming methods more than compensated for the labor shortage. The result was that America could feed not only its own population and military, but also provide substantial food aid to allies like Britain and the Soviet Union. Industrial production told a similar story. American factories were producing not just weapons and ammunition, but also consumer goods, construction materials, and all the infrastructure needed to support a global war effort. The scale was unprecedented in human history. By 1944, American industry was producing more war material than all Axis nations combined. This abundance wasn't accidental. It was the result of decades of investment in education, infrastructure, and industrial capacity. But to Japanese prisoners, raised in a culture that valued frugality and sacrifice, it seemed almost supernatural. How could one nation possess such resources while still maintaining the military strength to fight on multiple fronts? As Japanese prisoners adapted to life in American camps, some began to serve as informal cultural bridges between their captors and their homeland. American authorities, recognizing the value of cultural understanding, encouraged these exchanges within security limits. Some prisoners taught their guards basic Japanese language and customs. Others shared insights into Japanese military thinking that helped American planners understand their enemy's mindset. A few even participated in psychological warfare efforts, helping to craft surrender appeals that would resonate with Japanese cultural values. These interactions humanized both sides of the conflict. American guards, initially suspicious or hostile toward Japanese prisoners, often developed genuine respect for their courage, dignity, and intelligence. Japanese prisoners, in turn, began to see Americans not as the demons of propaganda, but as individuals with their own values, fears, and hopes. Corporal James Mitchell, who guarded Japanese prisoners at Camp Shelby in Mississippi, later reflected, "At first, I hated them for what they'd done at Pearl Harbor, for what our boys were going through in Japanese camps. But after months of working with them, seeing how they conducted themselves with dignity, even in defeat, I started to understand that they were soldiers like us, caught up in something bigger than any of us could control." As 1944 turned to 1945, and American forces drew ever closer to Japan itself, the psychological transformation of Japanese prisoners in American camps continued to deepen. These men, who had entered captivity expecting death or torture, instead found themselves confronting questions that struck at the heart of everything they had believed about war, honor, and national identity. The abundance of their daily meals had become routine, but the questions it raised remained profound. If their enemies could afford such generosity toward prisoners while simultaneously mounting the largest military campaign in history, what did that suggest about the ultimate outcome of the war? And if American propaganda about prisoner treatment had proven accurate, what about American claims regarding their war aims and post-war intentions? These questions would become even more urgent as news filtered into the camps about the devastating bombing campaigns against Japanese cities, the Soviet entry into the Pacific War, and the mysterious new weapons that had destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. For Japanese prisoners who had spent months or years questioning their preconceptions about America and the war, Japan's surrender would bring not just relief, but a complex mixture of vindication and sorrow. But that transformation, from prisoners of war to witnesses of a new world order, would test everything they had learned about themselves, their enemies, and the true cost of the conflict that had consumed their youth. The simple shock of that first American meal had opened a door to questions that would reshape not just individual lives, but the relationship between two nations that had been locked in mortal combat. The story of how these men navigated the end of the war, their eventual repatriation to a devastated Japan, and their role in building a new relationship between former enemies, would prove that sometimes the most profound victories happen not on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when enemies discover their shared humanity over a simple meal. August 6, 1945. The news reached American POW camps in fragments, whispered conversations between guards, hurried meetings among camp commanders, and finally, carefully worded announcements that would change everything. A single American bomb had destroyed the city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, another had obliterated Nagasaki. For Japanese prisoners who had spent months questioning their understanding of American capabilities, these revelations were both vindication and horror. Hiroshi Nakamura, the young soldier we met at the beginning of our story, was working in the camp vegetable garden when he heard the news. He later recalled the moment with crystalline clarity. I was holding a tomato, red, perfect, larger than any I had seen in Japan even before the war. When the guard told us about the bomb, I just stood there, holding that tomato, thinking about how everything I thought I knew about power, about technology, about America, had been wrong. If they could grow tomatoes this perfect for prisoners, and also build weapons that could destroy entire cities, what kind of nation were we really fighting? The psychological impact on Japanese prisoners was immediate and profound. For months, they had been grappling with the contradiction between propaganda and reality. Now, faced with evidence of American technological supremacy that bordered on the incomprehensible, many experienced a complete collapse of their worldview. The same nation that had been feeding them better than they had ever eaten was capable of unleashing the power of the sun itself. Some prisoners retreated into denial. Others fell into deep depression, overwhelmed by the implications of what they were learning. But a significant number began to see their captivity in an entirely new light, not as a shameful defeat, but as an unexpected salvation that had removed them from a conflict that had been hopeless from the beginning. August 15th, 1945. In POW camps across America, Japanese prisoners gathered around radios to hear something unprecedented, their emperor's voice, broadcast directly to the Japanese people. Emperor Hirohito's surrender announcement, delivered in the formal court Japanese that many prisoners struggled to fully understand, marked the end of everything they had fought for. The reaction was not what American camp commanders had expected. There were no celebrations, no expressions of relief that the killing was finally over. Instead, many prisoners wept, not from joy, but from a complex mixture of grief, shame, and bewilderment. The divine emperor, whose will had been absolute and unquestionable, had just acknowledged defeat. For men raised to believe in Japanese invincibility and divine protection, this was more than military surrender. It was cosmic collapse. At Camp McCoy in Wisconsin, Sergeant Morrison watched as Japanese prisoners processed the news. They just sat there in complete silence for what felt like hours. Some were crying, but quietly, like they were mourning something too big for words. A few of the older prisoners started talking about seppuku, ritual suicide, but the younger ones talked them out of it. I think by then they'd been with us long enough to start thinking differently about honor and death. The surrender announcement also contained subtle messages that would prove crucial for the prisoners' psychological adjustment. Hirohito spoke of enduring the unendurable and accepting defeat to prevent further suffering of the Japanese people. For prisoners who had been tormented by shame over their own survival, these words provided a kind of retroactive permission to live. In the weeks following Japan's surrender, American camp administrators faced an unexpected challenge, helping Japanese prisoners reconstruct their sense of identity and purpose. The rigid honor code that had defined their lives had been shattered, leaving many men adrift in a moral vacuum. Some prisoners found solace in the very abundance that had initially shocked them. If America could afford to feed its enemies so well while fighting a global war, perhaps there were different ways to measure national strength and honor. Maybe survival itself, rather than glorious death, could be a form of service to their families and their devastated homeland. Dr. Takeshi Nakamura, the military physician we encountered earlier, became an informal counselor to his fellow prisoners during this period. He later wrote, "I told them that we had been given a gift, the chance to see how a different kind of society operated, how former enemies could treat each other with dignity. This knowledge would be valuable when we returned to Japan. We could help build something better from the ruins." This perspective gradually gained acceptance among many prisoners. They began to see their time in American camps not as shameful captivity, but as an education in different possibilities. They had witnessed firsthand that prosperity and military strength were not mutually exclusive, that treating enemies humanely was not a sign of weakness, and that abundance shared was more powerful than scarcity hoarded. The process of returning Japanese prisoners to their homeland was logistically complex and emotionally fraught. Japan, in late 1945, was a nation in ruins, its cities bombed flat,
Good morning, Mike.
its economy
Let's get
collapsed,
this over with.
its people struggling to survive on minimal rations. The contrast with the well-fed, relatively healthy prisoners returning from American camps was stark and sometimes painful. American authorities faced a delicate balancing act. They wanted to demonstrate the benefits of humane treatment, both for propaganda purposes and to encourage better treatment of American
Cheap
prisoners
ass son
still
of a
being held
bitch.
by other
That's
nations.
all you're gonna buy?
But they also recognized that returning prisoners who were obviously better nourished than the general Japanese population might create resentment and social tension. The solution was a gradual transition process. In the months before repatriation, Japanese prisoners were slowly reduced to rations more comparable to what they would find in Japan. They were also given extensive briefings about conditions in their homeland and counseled on how to readjust to a society that had been fundamentally transformed by defeat and occupation. Captain Robert Hayes, who oversaw repatriation processing at Camp Shelby, recalled the complexity of these preparations. We were sending these men back to a Japan that no longer existed. Everything they had known, the government, the military, the social structure, even the physical landscape, had been destroyed or transformed. We tried to prepare them, but how do you prepare someone for the complete collapse of their world? The actual return to Japan proved even more traumatic than many prisoners had anticipated. Ships carrying repatriated POWs docked at ports that had been reduced to rubble. Former soldiers who had been eating American beef and fresh vegetables for months found themselves in a homeland where people were surviving on sweet potato vines and acorns. The psychological impact was devastating. Many returnees experienced what we would now recognize as survivor's guilt, intensified by the obvious disparity between their physical condition and that of their countrymen. Some faced accusations of cowardice or collaboration from family members who had endured years of bombing, starvation, and loss. Kenji Yamamoto, the former private we met earlier, described his homecoming. "My mother had aged 20 years in the 3 I was gone. She weighed maybe 80 pounds, and her teeth were falling out from malnutrition. When she saw how healthy I looked, she asked if I had forgotten how to be Japanese. That hurt more than anything the Americans had done to me." But these returnees also brought something valuable, a different perspective on what was possible. They had seen a society that could wage total war while maintaining abundance, that could treat enemies with dignity while still achieving victory. As Japan began the long process of reconstruction under American occupation, these former prisoners became informal ambassadors for a different way of thinking about power, prosperity, and international relations. The American occupation of Japan from 1945 to 1952 created an unexpected opportunity for former Japanese POWs to serve as cultural interpreters. Their experience in American camps had given them insights into American thinking and values that proved invaluable during the complex process of rebuilding Japanese society. Some former prisoners found work as translators or liaisons with occupation authorities. Others used their understanding of American agricultural and industrial methods to help rebuild Japan's shattered economy. A few even traveled to the United States as part of cultural exchange programs, returning to the very camps where they had been held, now as guests rather than prisoners. The irony was profound. Men who had been captured as enemies were now helping to forge one of the most successful partnerships in international relations. The abundance they had experienced in American POW camps became a model for what Japan might achieve through peaceful cooperation rather than military conquest. Hiroshi Nakamura, our young soldier from the opening scene, eventually became a successful businessman in post-war Japan. He specialized in importing American agricultural equipment and techniques, helping to modernize Japanese farming. In a 1975 interview, he reflected on the strange trajectory of his life. That first meal in the American camp, the beef, the butter, the vegetables I couldn't identify, it wasn't just food, it was a glimpse of a different future. Not just for me, but for Japan itself. The stories of Japanese POWs in American camps had broader implications that extended far beyond individual experiences. As these men shared their stories with family and friends, they helped to reshape Japanese perceptions of America and the West more generally. The narrative of American brutality and decadence that had been central to Japanese wartime propaganda was difficult to maintain when confronted with first-hand accounts of humane treatment and material abundance. This shift in perception made it easier for many Japanese to accept the legitimacy of American occupation and to embrace the democratic reforms that followed. The economic implications were equally significant. Japanese prisoners had witnessed American industrial and agricultural methods firsthand. They had seen how mechanization, scientific management, and abundant resources could create prosperity even in wartime. These observations would prove crucial as Japan embarked on its post-war economic miracle. Dr. Nakamura, writing in the 1960s as Japan's economy began its spectacular growth, noted, "We learned in those camps that abundance was not just about having more things. It was about having systems, agricultural, industrial, social, that could create and distribute wealth efficiently. The Americans didn't just feed us well because they were kind, though they were. They fed us well because they had built a society capable of producing abundance even under the stress of global war." Perhaps most importantly, Japanese POWs had experienced something that few Japanese civilians had ever encountered: a system based on rules rather than arbitrary authority. American POW camps, whatever their limitations, operated according to written regulations that were consistently applied. Prisoners had rights that were respected, grievance procedures that functioned, and a degree of personal autonomy that was revolutionary for men raised in an authoritarian military culture. This experience with rule-based governance proved invaluable as Japan struggled to implement democratic institutions under American occupation. Former POWs became some of the most effective advocates for democratic reform, not because they had been indoctrinated by their captors, but because they had seen how such systems could work in practice. The contrast with their experience of Japanese military culture was stark. In the Imperial Army, orders were absolute, and questioning authority was unthinkable. In American camps, prisoners could file complaints, request different work assignments, and even participate in camp governance through elected representatives. For many, this was their first experience of participatory decision-making. As the decades passed and Japan emerged as one of America's closest allies, the experiences of Japanese POWs in American camps took on almost mythical significance. These men became living bridges between two cultures that had been locked in mortal combat, proof that enemies could become friends and that different societies could learn from each other. The simple shock of that first abundant meal had opened doors to questions that reshaped not just individual lives, but the relationship between nations. The abundance that had seemed so impossible to Japanese prisoners in 1942 became the model for Japan's own post-war prosperity. The humane treatment they received became a template for how former enemies might treat each other in a new international order. By the 1970s, as Japan's economic miracle reached its peak, some former POWs found themselves in the surreal position of hosting American business delegations eager to learn Japanese management techniques. The students had become teachers, the prisoners had become partners, and the abundance that had once seemed uniquely American was now being replicated and even improved upon in Japan itself. The individual stories of transformation were as remarkable as the broader historical trends. Take Sergeant Yoshio Tanaka, captured during the Battle of Guadalcanal in 1943. He arrived at Camp Shelby weighing barely 90 pounds, suffering from malnutrition and tropical diseases. The first meal he was served, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and apple pie, seemed like a hallucination. "I thought I was dying, and this was some kind of vision," he later recalled. In Japan, even before the war, chicken was a luxury we might have once a year. Here they were giving it to prisoners. I ate maybe 3 bites and then stopped, convinced it was poisoned or that I would be punished for taking so much. Over the following months, as Tanaka's health improved and his understanding of American society deepened, he began to see possibilities he had never imagined. He learned English from sympathetic guards, studied American agricultural techniques during work details, and even began corresponding with an American pen pal arranged through the YMCA. When he returned to Japan in 1946, Tanaka used his savings from camp work — prisoners were paid small wages for their labor — to start a small farm using techniques he had learned in Mississippi. By the 1960s, his operation had grown into one of Japan's most successful agricultural cooperatives, employing hundreds of people and pioneering the use of American-style mechanization and scientific farming methods. That first meal didn't just feed my body, Tanaka reflected in a 1980 interview. It fed my imagination. It showed me that scarcity wasn't inevitable, that abundance was possible if you had the right systems and the right attitudes. Everything I accomplished after the war started with that moment of disbelief in an American prison camp. The experiences of Japanese POWs in American camps became part of a larger transformation in how nations thought about war, peace, and international relations. The Geneva Conventions, updated and strengthened after World War II, reflected lessons learned from conflicts where humane treatment of prisoners had proven more effective than brutality. The economic integration that followed, first between Japan and the United States, then expanding to include much of the Pacific Rim, was built on foundations of mutual respect and understanding that had been laid, in part, by the interactions between captors and prisoners in American POW camps. The abundance that had shocked Japanese prisoners became a model for post-war development worldwide. The Marshall Plan in Europe, economic assistance to Japan, and later development aid programs all reflected the understanding that prosperity shared was more effective than poverty
Well,
imposed.
morning.
Perhaps
I
most
got a
profoundly,
hangover,
the
so
stories
just
of
keep it
Japanese
down.
POWs in American camps
Quit
offered
talking.
insights into
Either
human
buy
nature
something or
itself.
piss off.
These men had been trained to see Americans as subhuman enemies, deserving only death. Americans, in turn, had been conditioned to view Japanese soldiers
knew you
as
were a cheap
fanatical
motherfucker.
savages incapable of reason or mercy. Yet when circumstances forced them to interact as human beings rather than enemies, both sides discovered their shared humanity. The abundance of American meals became a
Money
symbol of
talks,
this
bullshit
recognition,
walks.
not just of physical needs, but of the fundamental dignity that all people deserved, even in wartime. The guards who served those first shocking meals to bewildered Japanese prisoners were making a statement about values that transcended national boundaries. They were saying that even enemies deserved to eat, to be treated with basic decency, to be recognized as fellow human beings caught up in circumstances beyond their control.
Deal's
In the
done.
end, the
Now,
story of
beat it,
Japanese
fucker.
POWs and their first American meals reveals a fundamental paradox about war and human nature. The very abundance that enabled America to wage total war
You better take
across
this
multiple
job.
continents
Word of advice.
also enabled
Next
it to
time,
treat its enemies
bathe before
with
coming to a
unprecedented
job
generosity.
interview.
The same industrial capacity that
I think
produced
it's literally
bombers
the
and
same one.
battleships also produced the food that nourished former enemies. This paradox would shape the post-war world in ways that few could have anticipated in 1942. The abundance that shocked Japanese prisoners became the foundation for a new kind of international order, one based not on the domination of the weak by the strong, but on the recognition that prosperity shared was more powerful than scarcity hoarded. The young Japanese soldier who sat in disbelief over his first American meal had witnessed more than just an act of kindness or even strategic wisdom. He had seen a glimpse of a different future, one where former enemies could become partners, where abundance could be created rather than simply seized, and where the true measure of a nation's strength lay not in its ability to destroy, but in its capacity to build and to share. As we reflect on these remarkable stories, it's worth remembering that they began with something as simple as a meal. Not a diplomatic summit or a peace treaty, but the basic human act of sharing food. In that moment, when bewildered Japanese prisoners first encountered American abundance, something fundamental shifted in how both sides understood each other and themselves. The shock of that first meal, the disbelief, the confusion, the gradual recognition of what it represented, became a metaphor for the broader transformation that would reshape the Pacific region and the world. It demonstrated that even in the midst of total war, human dignity could be preserved, that enemies could be treated with respect, and that abundance shared was more powerful than scarcity imposed. Today, as we face new global challenges and tensions, the lessons of those POW camps remain relevant. They remind us that humanity transcends national boundaries, that prosperity is more effectively built through cooperation than conquest, and that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest acts of recognition and respect. The Japanese prisoners, who couldn't believe their first American meal, had stumbled upon a truth that would reshape the world, that in recognizing the humanity of our enemies, we discover the best possibilities for them. In feeding their prisoners, Americans were not just following regulations, pursuing strategic advantage. They were making a statement about the kind of world they wanted to build after the government fell silent. That world, imperfect as it remains, has been shaped by the understanding that abundance shared creates more security than scarcity hoarded, that former enemies can become the closest allies, and that sometimes the most important victories happen not on battlefields, but across dinner tables where strangers discover their share of humanity. The meal that shocked those Japanese prisoners in 1942 became the first course in a feast of cooperation that continues to nourish the world today.
There's an eerie silence in the stadium as a 17-year-old boy is pushed onto the playing field in a squeaky wheelchair. His mother, among a crowd of about 10,000 people, is holding back tears. With his mouth gagged, he wriggles around in the chair, just as 3 soldiers point their machine guns at him. 9 shots are fired. His chest explodes. There's a collective gasp in the crowd, then silence, followed by frantic, rapturous clapping that lasts 10 whole minutes. Can you imagine being
Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and everything is worse now. Now, Asmongold has been on a bit of a tear over the last couple hours. He made a video, he made a couple of tweets, and I think it's really important to talk about a really specific aspect of this, because I really do believe this is a turning point for the USA. And I will be talking about it in various ways over the next couple of days, and probably for the next couple of years. I think people aren't recognizing how unbelievably tragic the situation is, not only from a humanity perspective, that you have an innocent citizen for our country, for his family, and for God that was killed, but also the fact that this unbelievable to our country and democracy. It is absolutely diabolical, and the reality is the fact that who knows how preventable this could have been. Obviously, this was God's plan, and Charlie is in a better place now, as heart-wrenching as it is to say. But the reality is, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens on the internet. Uncomfortable saying things on the internet that will not be acceptable moving forward. I think that the world has come together to recognize that the violent rhetoric that happens online is absolutely dangerous and detrimental. And I think that everyone was so worried about government surveillance. Welcome to the era of government surveillance. The world is changing. You will have people absolutely taking the incitement to violence seriously moving forward. It is a truly horrifying reality that we're living in, and finally people are noticing. I've been screaming about this, literally yelling at the fucking walls that all the fucking far leftists inciting violence are gonna get somebody killed. And they killed the best of us. So, Asmongold made this tweet. Anyone surprised what happened to Charlie Kirk hasn't been paying attention. He's right. Go anywhere, Reddit, Twitter, etc. You'll find thousands of unhinged direct calls to violence over politics. Until it's addressed for what it is, things like this will continue to happen. And he's right. We have laws. Our laws prevent stochastic prison. Our laws prevent incitement of violence. And our laws are not being upheld. When you have reputable journalists like Taylor Lorenz saying someone has to do it in regards to killing Trump, when you have the former FBI director saying 8647, which means kill Trump, when you have the largest leftist political streamer in the world, Hassan Diddy Bin Laden Piker, yelling and screaming at his audience to kill United States senators, you know, at some point something awful and terrible is going to happen. And Charlie Kirk wasn't a radical. He wasn't far right. He wasn't some white nationalist. He was the best of us. He was just a guy. He was just a guy being a dude and fighting for what he believed in, fighting for God. And that was it. That's all that needed to happen. He was a Nazi in the eyes of the masses, and they're celebrating his death. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. So Elon Musk responds with yes, which I think is a good sign as far as what's to come. And it's absolutely terrifying to see where we actually go. Now, Legacy Killa HD points out that several game devs are liking posts by the singer artist mocking Charlie Kirk's name, including lots of people from Coalition Gears, Bungie, and the Arena. Lots of people from different studios, gaming studios. Asmongold says, if you want me to make a list tomorrow, I can with links to their employers. People are taking this seriously. This isn't just some sort of mob going after wokeness in video games. A good man was killed for this. And realistically, no one wants to see this happen again. No one. It's over. It's over. The radicalization process has happened, as they are calling it. I think people are not recognizing how unbelievably serious this situation is and how the world changed forever. Everything is worse now, and the world has changed. So, realistically, the list is growing. Asmongold, TikTok is making lists. And realistically, this is just gonna keep happening, and it's gonna keep getting bigger and bigger. So Brian Cressenstein, far-left retard extraordinaire and a bit of a faggot, decides to say, at FBI, at Cash Patel, at X, help me. Some guy with 100 followers said, fuck you, coming after you. We should arrest this guy. He said, fuck you to me. He said, coming after you. Asmongold responds, I thought you were cute, with the 8647 t-shirts and other calls to violence. Now it's happening to you. It's not going to stop. Now it's only going to get worse, and no one should have any sympathy for you. Be safe. Now, Asmongold's tweet, racial. Also, to be honest, this tweet is not a call to violence. This is not a statement. This is what we call an analysis. Yes, when you are part of the retard movement that constantly calls to violence because you are a fucking terrorist organization on the far left, and you're gonna keep pushing this shit, you're gonna keep yelling and screaming about it, realistically, this is a warning. Be safe. It is happening to you. Build the best of us. It's crazy. It's crazy to live in this timeline. I still can hardly imagine it. So, of course, Brian Crescenstein, you know what he has to say about this? He only has wise words. Reporting this threat to the FBI and Secret Service and Elon Musk, please do something about this account. This Asmongold guy told me that that I should be safe. This is a threat. And Asmongold doesn't give a shit, because honestly, I think I have been like in the no fucks given mode for a couple of months. But the no fucks is going viral. Alright, I have fucks given to do. As we respond, trying to report me that's sympathy baiting after you've spent months advocating for political violence. Who is this post for? Everyone can see through transparently. Completely true. You know, because this dude makes believe. Oh no! A random guy on Twitter messaged me saying he's coming after you. What are we doing, guys? I get death threats every single fucking day. I've never doled one out. I've never even seen anyone in my audience be sending death threats. You know what? I think Hassan Piker, for example, is a terrorist-supporting communist that should be deported or imprisoned. I really do. I think he's genuinely dangerous to the United States of America. I don't give him death threats. I don't see my audience give him death threats. This is really a left-exclusive ideology. It is the terrorist left. All right, not just the far left, the terrorist left that are pulling this shit off. They really are. They always have. And you can tell because they align with the terrorists literally in every fucking conflict in the universe. Every global conflict with terrorists involved, the left supports the terrorists. Every single fucking time. It's pretty weird how it keeps aligning like that. Pretty weird. So anyway, Hassan sees a clip from Asmongold's video, which we're gonna watch. I didn't see it yet, but he sees a clip from Asmongold's video, and he's not happy that Asmongold is going scorched earth.
Practice genuine terrorism on a daily.
Dude, he's such a pussy. Just say you want me to be fucking killed, okay?
He's not saying that because he doesn't want you to be fucking killed.
Okay. What is this? What is this wishy-washy like, oh, the left gets to do terrorism, and the left is defended for doing terrorism, and they should actually experience the violence themselves. That's what he's trying to say.
And then, you know, congratulate each other about how moral and how good they are for doing it, because something bad that happened in Palestine, or something bad that Donald Trump did 3 years ago. This is
Which partner streamer, by the way?
Simply a response. This is what's going to happen. And so, and I think that that's probably what it's going to take for these left-wing people to realize what a bad idea what they've been doing is. Because until it starts happening to them, until they start having people that are their friends, or, you know, their, you know, like icons that they look up to, same way people look up to Charlie.
This person is more my contemporary on the opposing side than fucking this rat is. I was supposed to debate him 2 weeks from now. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, he was supposed to debate Charlie Kirk in 2 weeks, and for the last 6 months, he's just been calling him a Nazi. I wonder if that had some sort of effect on it.
I've known this person for longer than I've known Asmongold. He has abhorrent views, okay? And I despise his views.
He does not have incredibly normal views that, honestly, resonates with the majority of America. Views resonate with the majority of the country, Charlie Kirk. His abhorrent views is that abortion is murder. Oh, an abhorrent view. You shouldn't kill babies. Abhorrent, ladies and gentlemen.
But he's over here using the death of a dude I was supposed to debate 2 weeks from now to fucking call for violence in the pussiest way possible without naming it. He doesn't want to go that far because he already experienced that. He already experienced that issue one time when he actually said, you know, Palestinians deserve genocide.
He never said that. He said he doesn't care if people that have genocide baked into their laws get genocided. That's what he said. At least quote him.
While he's fucking crying on the sidelines about 86-47, he's literally...
86-47 means kill Trump. 86 means to kill or to get rid of, and 47 is the 47th president. Sorry, bitch. Yeah, he's upset that people are calling for political violence.
Literally saying until the left start dropping like flies, they won't understand the violence that they're causing in this country.
He's not trying to get anyone to kill people on the left. You're not the victim here, Hassan, okay? He's just basically saying, in basic, obvious terms, the left has been inciting violence constantly in America for the last many years. Every violent riot, every single one, except for January 6th, everyone was left-based. All of the political violence has been left-based.
Settle down,
all of it,
little one.
So, Hassan, who calls for terroristic violence all the fucking time and supports every terrorist organization he could possibly find, he's so mad when Asmongold says it's likely that there will be violence against the left now.
Why the fuck would I want to debate Charlie Kirk if I wanted him to be killed?
Literally the worst argument of all time.
It's so fucking stupid. This is a much more active death threat than...
This is not a death threat. He's just saying that the left has been committing violence against the right for years, and it's very likely gonna come back around to bite them. That's what he said. That's not a threat.
Any number...
Yeah, he's observing it. It's that Hassan Piker, political commentator, can't understand basic media literacy.
of different clip chimp things that he could point to about me, okay?
Yeah, so Asmongold responds, and I don't support political violence. But this was Hassan from Nick Fuentes. Now, I don't agree with the majority of Nick Fuentes' opinions that I've seen just clipped and thrown around. I do agree with some of them, by the way. I don't agree with all of them, obviously. I think he's definitely far right. He's definitely radical. This is what Hassan had to say.
No, we gotta, you know, the moment is clear. You gotta sick like the ACP guys on him. Okay, that's it. You gotta get one of those like Hazal Dink type motherfuckers to just like eat his ass alive, you know? Let him fight.
Yeah, so this is directly calling for violence on Nick Fuentes. Now, to be clear, this is a way more direct call to violence than anything Asmongold did. And also, to be clear, I think Nick Fuentes is much better for America than Hassan. Nick Fuentes probably wants me killed. I'm joking, obviously. I don't think he wants anyone killed, to be honest. Nick Fuentes is definitely an incendiary guy. Yeah, he has his incredible hot takes, you know, holy war against the Jews and all of that. But he's genuine. He fights for our country. You know, he fights for our country. He does, in his own way. I disagree with a lot of his strategies, but he does fight for our country. He did have sadness and remorse and make a heartbreaking tweet when Charlie Kirk was killed, and he hated Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel. Hassan couldn't even condemn the shooting of Charlie Kirk. I watched it. I looked through his stream. I looked through his condemn the murder of the guy he was supposed to debate into. He couldn't condemn him. The political assassination that took place. Obviously, because he supports it, in my opinion. He supports all of the political violence. He supported the two Israeli guys getting murdered in Washington. This. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. He's a terrorist supporter. He's a communist. Of course he supports this. He should be deported immediately. But anyway, I wanted to see Asmongold's take because the reality is we are moving into a new era right now. A very, very scary era. And realistically, it's really, really fun. Really fun to take a look at how this will change the world moving forward. Because the internet will never be the same. All the people that are just sitting around and yelling and screaming about inciting violence to people, that shit's over. We're living in a new era. It's Palantir time, okay? People don't realize what we're walking into. I only hope that it makes the world a better place. Even though
You think you're pretty smart now, don't you? Here's your pay, Einstein.
Hey guys, it's me again, and it's been a little while. Just before I get into the main topic of the video, I want to explain why there haven't been
I'm gonna
any
make
videos.
you an all
My
good
dad's
luck.
been in the
You
hospital
better not
for
make me
the better part of
regret
a week
this.
now. Very serious situation. It has required my full attention. And because
Try
of that, I've been
anything
on
smart,
call.
Good son.
and you'll get a new start.
That's what I'm talking about, man. This is a man that he's fighting for what's right. Oh, dude. His dad has pancreatic cancer. Look, my grandmother died of pancreatic cancer, so I relate. It's horrible.
I've been dealing
You
with other
cheap
people,
ass
talking
son of
to
a
family,
bitch.
and
That's
doing
all you're
everything
gonna
that I
buy?
need to be there for my dad and for my family during
We're praying for you guys. We are.
this situation, and because of that I haven't been live and I haven't made a lot of videos. I apologize for that. Hopefully I'll be back as soon as possible. That being said, we had something insane happen today, and I was able to break away a little bit earlier, and I wanted to make a video about it and talk about the obvious and inevitable nature of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This happened a few hours ago, and it was probably one of the most gruesome and graphic, and this is coming from somebody who grew up on Lively.
It was the worst. Like, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Literally one of the worst things I've ever seen. Just seeing that video with blood pouring out of his neck, dude. The moment I saw that video, I just said, all right, well, it's in God's hands because no man could save him. And I guess God decided it was his time. Yeah, it literally, it fucked me up. It destroyed me. It really did. He was a good man.
Videos I've ever seen. The first time I saw a video, I thought it was AI generated.
Yeah.
The guy gets shot in the neck, and blood is spurting out. I didn't even know it could do that. And
He literally got shot right in the jugular.
and it was absolutely fucking horrifying to see something like that happen.
And to a guy that, you know, I've watched hours and hours of his content. I've had DMs with him on Twitter. You know, he was a guy. He was a force for good, ultimately. He really was. It's horrific. Absolutely horrific. Just to see that happen. Yeah, I will never forget it. It burned into my head forever. It changed me as a person. It did. It did. I give so much credit to Charlie for what he's done. He really brought, in my opinion, he really brought God into the public discourse. You know, he was never someone to stray away from it, and he died for God. He was a real martyr, a genuine legend, a faithful servant. Can't even wrap my head around how horrifying this is.
In front of a massive audience of people. Now, if you don't know who Charlie Kirk
In front of 3,000 people, executed publicly, and he had security and everything. But it was a sniper, and it didn't matter.
is, Charlie Kirk has been a pretty noteworthy, controversial guy. He's a conservative.
He's not controversial, to be clear. Everyone likes calling him controversial. He's not. He has generic conservative values. Generic conservative values. He is not radical in any way. And watching the media turn him into, he was radical. He was far right. He hated black people. You know, he really wasn't a radical guy at all. He had pretty common sense, basic, normal values. He really did. And everyone's like, oh, but he thought abortion was murder. Yeah. Yeah, he did. Of course. Obviously. Yeah, for sure. Because, you know, they're killing babies for no reason most of the time. And the reality is, people like framing him that way, but he really wasn't. He was only controversial because he was popular. He was popular and went viral. He was controversial. Bro didn't do anything wrong. Like, controversial is when you're on Epstein's Island 46 times. Alright? Controversial is when you're constantly, you know, calling to the fucking people to kill a United States senator. Controversial is saying that America deserved 9/11. That's controversial. Controversial is what? Having an open debate, an open conversation with people? Just open discussion? That's controversial now? Dog. He was a regular guy. He was a regular guy that fought for what's right. And even if you disagree with him, he thought was right, which is the First Amendment of the United States.
He goes to a lot of college campuses, does live debates. This is a pretty popular format nowadays, and Charlie Kirk has been popularizing it and utilizing it now for many years, and he's even featured in South Park recently because of it. Charlie Kirk definitely is not a super radical right-wing person, but I would say that he's more of the moderate to, you know, kind of very, very, I would say, lukewarm, though, in my opinion. At least
I agree.
In And this
I'm so glad he said that. I completely agree.
is where it's going, especially compared to now. And what I think is going to happen now, because obviously, these shootings like this don't really happen inside of a vacuum.
No, of course not.
And they never do.
No, who wakes up one morning and is like, oh, I'm gonna go murder this guy because he has an opinion like me. It's obvious. It's so obvious that it's some sort of indoctrination. It's like when you see a Hamas terrorist that makes a phone call to his dad. This audio was released on October 7th. A Hamas terrorist calls his dad and is like, Dad, I did it. I'm calling from a Jew phone. I just killed 10 Jews. I have their blood on my hand. Dad, this is so awesome. I have their blood on my hands. I killed 10 Jews. Like, that's a clip that went viral. That is something that happened because that person was indoctrinated. That's not a defense, by the way. Fuck that person. Hope he's burning in hell. He probably is. But realistically, this happens because of an indoctrination. You don't just wake up and do that, you know? You don't just wake up and do that shit. No way that happened. Oh, that did happen. That was played in the United Nations, actually, that recording. That is a true story. So this shit never happens in a vacuum. Never, ever. In my opinion, it's so obvious that the constant over-politicizing of shit is what caused this.
They never have. And I think that the situation that we have right now is that there is a tremendous amount of political violence that is advocated for, promoted, and allowed to exist on social media that has turned up the temperature in all political conversations, all social conversations, and all discourse on the internet in general.
The guy that murdered the 2 Israeli Christians in Washington, D.C., that guy, part of all sorts of online socialist clubs. Of course, these motherfuckers are turning up the temperature. Obviously, this is radicalizing people. The trans freak that shot up a Catholic school the other week, this person had all the sorts of social media accounts. Had all the fucking bio. Every single fucking one. Collecting Twitter flags like Pokemon. Right? Dude is fighting for trans rights and free Palestine. All leftoid slop.
To a point where it's almost unrecoverable. You have people that are out there all the time advocating for violence, advocating for people to get killed. Somebody needs to take care of this guy.
Yes.
Somebody needs to deal with
Dude,
this.
literally,
I
he's
wish
right.
you were dead.
He's right. He's literally correct. I mean, and you don't even need to look far. It's horrifying. So one of the most popular leftist journalists these days is a cretin by the name of Taylor Lorenz. So Taylor Lorenz's most popular video on YouTube is titled "Someone Needs to Do It" in regards to killing Trump. Like, really? We don't know where this is going? What are we doing, guys? What are we fucking doing?
Won't somebody do it? The 8647,
True.
all of the crypto messaging, and all the doxing, right? Why do you dox somebody? Why do you post?
Obviously, you dox people to get them to kill people. Obviously. Why else would you post their public information if it's not for violence?
It's to make other people that are insane, like the person who killed Charlie Kirk, it's to give them the ammunition
True.
they need
True.
to kill that person. And
Right, the actual Taylor Lorenz's and Hassan Pikers, they're pussies. They're gigantic walking vaginas. Right? They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to actually have repercussions. They would love political violence. They would love a terrorist movement to start in America to take out the fascists, as they label them all. They would love that shit. Absolutely. That's why they stoke the coals, stir the flames, try their absolute fucking best to get this shit to happen. And then, oopsie, it was just a mentally ill guy that actually did it. Because, you know, obviously, no normal person is going to go murder somebody and fuck their entire life. Right? No normal person's going to do that. But all they need to do is get one fucking psycho to do it. That's all they need. They have an audience of millions. They just need one psychopath in their audience. That's it. That's literally it. Holy shit.
put that person's life in danger. That's why
I have people popping up in my chat. Didn't Charlie Kirk say X and Y about X and Y? Yeah, it's his opinion. You can't kill him for it in America. What are you fucking doing? What are you talking about? Oh, he had an opinion I disagree with. And
That's the fucked
literally,
up part.
fuck you if you think that's relevant right now.
They're doing it. And so that's the reason why they want to find out the identities of ICE agents. That's the reason why they want to find out the identities of Tesla owners, like at the beginning of the year. It's so they can destroy their car and destroy their lives.
Of course.
And this isn't necessarily a one-sided thing. I think that in the last 5 years or so, especially since BLM, it's been
True.
a like 90% left-wing thing. But that doesn't mean that the 10% right-wing people are either. But I do think that now you're going to see a lot more right-wing people balancing out the scales.
Terrifying. Terrifying. Look, man, you know, I would also obviously love to calm the temperature. And while I absolutely want the temperature to be calmed, we also need to arrest criminals. We need to arrest criminals. We need to realize that the far left is an actual terrorist organization.
Is that you can take a knife to a gunfight all you want, and you can think that you're honorable, but you're going to end up being dead.
True.
And I think that's what right-wing people have done for...
Honestly, arm up, boys. It's getting really scary out there. It really is. People don't know it yet, but we are at war. I hope for peace soon, but right now we're at war. Even if you don't realize that.
For a very long time. They've tried to speak above the political violence. They've tried to advocate above it and not try to stoop down to that level. But the issue is that a lot of these social media companies have expressed literally zero desire to even do the bare minimum of moderation. I think that
Crazy.
two of the worst actors are Twitter or X and Reddit. Both of these platforms are full of a bunch of extreme...
Twitter, Reddit, Blue Sky, Twitch, they're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. And if the government is actually going to start focusing on surveilling public accounts on the internet, this could change the course of history.
Extremist nut jobs that not only should have their accounts banned, but they should probably be put in mental institutions. And I think that now, taking a step back for a week or so, coming around to the inevitable reality that forward, that are just completely unhinged, under-medicated, and really just completely insane, that you can't have a person like that running wild out.
Bro. Look, man, you can argue about unhinged and mentally insane and under-medicated, and these are all, you know, things that exist for sure. We need to do something more about the reality of how fucking insane everything is, how high the temperature is, how evil some people are in society. We have to understand that we are in a holy war, all right? Good versus evil. Not labeling people anything, but there do be demons among us. Right? You see these people fucking laughing and cheering and so happy and overjoyed that this happened. These are people that do not have basic humanity. These are not people that are upholding the biblical values that founded our country. So yeah, we are at war.
In society, they cause problems for themselves, not to mention everybody else around them. And I think that the society, we need to have an honest conversation about how to deal with these people in a way that, and I'll be real, I don't really care about their crazy, their well-being and the way that, you know, things are for them. Of course, obviously, I wouldn't want it to be bad, but it's certainly not important. What's really important is all the people who aren't crazy, making sure that people that are not crazy, that are good actors, that are law-abiding citizens, are able to live a life of peace, a life of prosperity, and a life without fear of going on the subway, for example, as
Yeah,
the recent
true. That'd
event
be nice.
as well. And I think that every single person in the world deserves to live in a place like that. And I don't want to see...
I don't actually believe that necessarily. I don't think that people deserve anything. I think that you have to take and make the best of what we have and fight for what's right. I don't think we deserve things. Deserving implying that you exist and something falls into your lap. That you are an empty cup that someone fills up. That's deserving. I don't believe in deserving. I think that you deserve things when you do a job and you made a contract with your employer and your employer now pays you. You deserve that payment. All right? But when you don't do anything, With all due respect, abso-fucking-lutely not. Deserve? Deserve implies it happens by itself. We need to fight for this. We absolutely need to fight for this. We need to fight for our safe transit, and we need to fight for our safe cities, and we need to fight for our safe country, and we need to, in general, to uphold the actual values that we have, because they are trying to destroy it. They are.
You know, America turn into a PvP server, and it sure seems like it is. And I think that in order to prevent that from happening, we need to have honest conversations about what do you do with people that, you know, get arrested 14 times. And it's not even a question, right? You put them in jail and you throw away the key, and you compel them to work, and that way you can make the money back from imprisoning them forever. That's the way that you solve that problem. It's very simple, actually.
It is pretty simple. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, their rights don't override our rights. Absolutely not. 100%. Open the fucking hole and fill the hole, baby. Fill the fucking hole. No shadow of a doubt in my mind. That's what we need to do. If they're criminals, if they're dangerous to people around them, I don't care if they have mental health issues, they shouldn't be in public. Their rights do not override any of ours. What are we fucking doing? It's insane. Absolutely insanity.
But for some reason, the way that that makes people feel has made them unwilling to look at this obvious truth. If you look in history, this is what we've always done in history, and it's because it works. And the problem is that now we have so much of the discourse that's dominated by
fake empathy,
by emotional thinking, that's dominated by the most unstable, the most virtue signal, the most, you know, ridiculous, performative empathy possible.
He didn't want to say, the reality, but I'll tell you what he means. We've been feminized. We have been feminized. Men and women are biologically different creatures, okay? Absolutely. And women do operate more based on emotion than men. This is not a bad thing. This is reality. It's actually a good thing for a mom to operate on empathy and emotion. Absolutely. It's a wonderful thing. But this feminization of the entire country, where we have a massive group of people in the country that are literally voting and deciding and making decisions and doing witch hunts and the Karenization of people, that is literally fuckers feel so emotionally attached to the MS-13 illegal immigrant fucking human trafficker rapist cute wife. We care so much about that guy. How dare you deport him? Wow, that's horrible. I'll be real. I do think society would be in a better place if there would be one vote per household, and only with one vote. I think that America would be a better place. I do. For example, I absolutely do. We are living in an empathy-based society because of this grand fucking upheaval of this diabolical estrogenization of society. It's fucking insane to live in that timeline. But we do. But we do live on that timeline. And we have to figure out what we're going to do about it.
And that's defining a huge political voice in the country. This has become a tremendous detriment to it. The people like the shooter that probably shot Charlie Kirk with that gun.
And the irony is, these people don't even care. All of the people with empathy for the illegal immigrant rapist pedophiles don't have empathy for Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old man with a whole life ahead of him, married with 2 little kids that will grow up without a father. All of their empathy, all of the emotional bullshit that they all have, they feel so deeply for terrorist organizations in the Middle East. But they don't care that their fellow American guy who just woke up in the morning wanting to make the country better ended up dining with God that night. They don't care. It's fake empathy. It's emotional bullshit. It's all blackmailing. None of this fucking matters to these people. They don't care.
in the subway that stabbed that Ukrainian woman.
His wife and kids were there at that school event. Do you realize his 3-year-old daughter watched her father get shot in the neck and die in front of her while people on the campus cheered? Do you realize what's happening? But they have no empathy for that. They don't care. That's what I'm saying. You wanna see the worst tweet I saw today? Let me find it for you. It's pretty relevant. Not that I want to actually even look at it again, but I'll show you the worst tweet of the day. Alright, so this is a video of Charlie Kirk's daughter. Running up to him, and this gets retweeted by a Marxist guy with the Palestine flag, saying literally no one on this planet benefits more than the child who won't grow up with Charlie Kirk in their life. This has 164,000 likes. So yeah, we're fighting demons. That's the person with empathy, by the way. They even have a Palestine flag in their bio. That's how much they care.
Or with that trans shooter that shot up the school. One thing that's common among all of them is that these people, in almost all cases, were verifiably nuts beforehand, and nothing ever was done about it. And until we can...
And we are going to start. That's why the government, in my opinion, is going to start absolutely doing their absolute best to start doing deep dives. Like insane deep dives into the history of every single person. It's gonna be insane. Like, these people were verifiably crazy people first.
Stomach the idea of solving problems like that before they happen, we're gonna keep having problems. And I think that with Charlie Kirk, it's very obvious that the amount of, political violence and advocating for political violence that's happening on the internet has turned up the temperature and
I haven't in a few hours.
Culture where this type of behavior is normal. And not only is it normal, but it's actually encouraged. And the problem is that now people
I did respond to the DM you sent me earlier.
He went out, he assassinated a healthcare CEO. And everyone fucking celebrated him. Everyone celebrated him. Everyone celebrated Luigi Mangione killing the healthcare CEO. Now, to be clear, I don't give a shit about the healthcare CEO. I didn't like the guy. I didn't think he was a good dude. Did healthcare change? The answer is no. It didn't change at all. The only thing that did change is it obviously showed the world that there is a large portion on the terrorist left that really want to just murder people they don't like. Like, it's fucking horrifying.
Are acting on it. And you're starting to see this happen, and I think it's going to continue getting worse. I don't think Charlie Kirk is going to be the last one, but I think that we will look at Charlie Kirk's death and see it as a turning point in this topic. And what I'm really trying to get at here with this entire point is that right now we are at an extremely pivotal moment. And I think that what's going to end up happening is that right-wing people are not going to continue to turn the other cheek. They're not going to continue to just,
tune the temperature down and try our best. It's so scary. We're living at a really scary time.
Well, this is just a crazy left-wing radical. I think you're probably going to see right-wing people doing the same thing to left-wing people. And honestly, while I don't think this...
I mean, we will see what happens, obviously. It might. I'm praying that, that this doesn't happen anymore. A lot of people are, like, calling for vengeance and calling for people to kill left-wing politicians and stuff. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Don't do that, okay? That's horrible. It doesn't make you any better than that. It doesn't, okay? That's not vengeance. It's not justice. What the fuck are you doing? I hope it doesn't happen. But people are really angry. People are really, really angry. And rightfully. I don't believe in revenge, but I do believe in revenge. want to see vengeance, but I do want to see justice. I want our country to become a better place. And I think that if you really wanted to honor Charlie Kirk, you would fight for what he fought for. If you really wanted to honor this man, it wouldn't be by, you know, style riots and lighting shit on fire. The best way to honor Charlie Kirk is to fight for God, to build a family, to teach the next generation about what we should be fighting for. That's how you. That's not how you fight. You don't honor him by killing some other guy. Now, obviously, the gunman should be publicly executed because I believe in justice. Absolutely justice. I really believe that we need to amp up justice in the country. We're living in a two-tier system where a lot of people get off the hook way too.
It's a good thing. I certainly don't really think that's because a lot of
it's not our job to punish or judge people. It's for God to decide. I mean, God gave us the Bible. The Bible teaches us how to punish people. So no, I actually don't agree with you. I think God gave us rules, and in the rules it states that if someone takes a man's life, you put them to death. All right, Leviticus 24:17. God is telling us to kill the motherfucker that shot Charlie Kirk. All right, to be clear, he gave us these rules. Right, let's not be too holy. All right, let's not be too holy. Absolutely, you kill them before they kill you. That's the Bible.
When people have no problem advocating for violence, or at least using coded language to advocate for violence. The fact is, there's a certain level of intellectual dishonesty that goes on in situations like this, where it's considered, oh, well, you know, this isn't actually what they meant, and no, this is actually some other... No, it is. It's exactly what they mean.
Of course.
They're trying to advocate for killing people.
They do all the time, and they do it in code words, so you can't punish them for inciting violence. What a joke. Well, you know when Trump said burning the flag will put you in jail? Based as fuck. That is inciting riots. It really is. Okay? Enough of this bullshit. Alright, you incite violence, you are a criminal. You get fucked for it. And maybe more people would stop inciting violence.
Talking around. Insulting the intelligence of anyone you're speaking. And I think that now you're going to start seeing a lot of right-wing people end up doing this to left-wing people now. Because it's pretty clear these social media platforms, the FBI just refuses to deal with accountability.
He's completely right. I don't know what the FBI is fucking doing. You have someone on the internet saying go kill a politician and the FBI is twiddling their thumbs to the point that the dude's not even banned from the internet? Like, what are we doing? Insane. When you see these unhinged, crazy, violent people, why don't you fucking do this?
For dealing with these obvious terrorists that are in the country.
True.
And because of that, I think you're going to start seeing an uptick in violence from right-wing people as well. And this is going to be, in my opinion, I don't really think the word is justified because it's not justified, but the word is expected. I think it's going to be expected. The fact
and of course, you know, Hassan is so mad that Asmongold is making an observation that there will be violence. And then he goes out and supports terrorist organizations. Classic. See, but I think that's a really easy example. Anyone in the FBI watching? Alright, anybody in the FBI watching? If there's a guy on the internet that is directly supporting United States designated terrorist organization, fucking do something about that?
is that, you know, again, you bring a knife to a gunfight, you're gonna lose. And don't be surprised when you keep bringing guns to gunfights and then somebody else decides to start shooting back. I think that's what's gonna happen. And I think this is a degradation of and ultimately, the real burden of responsibility here doesn't really fall on influencers. I don't think that it falls even on the commenters themselves.
I really think that the real responsibility obviously is primarily on the shooter. But it's also on every single person that doesn't apply our laws. does.
Primarily on the government. The fact is that the government, there are already laws that permit, explicit calls for violence. There are already laws that people engage in online.
I think he means forbid.
And
Up,
one of
up,
the
up, up, up,
things
come on, let's
is
go!
people like me want to any form of extra
Yeah,
censorship
just
at all.
basic
I certainly don't want that, and I don't know anybody else that
enforcement.
does either. But what we do want is we want existing laws to be applied and to be enforced in an accurate and a fair way, which is clearly not what's happening. And really, the government not doing that and giving this asymmetrical, in my opinion, advantage to left-wing people to fully and with complete freedom practice genuine terrorism on a daily basis, and then, you know, practically how good they are for doing it.
Fuck!
because something
Fuckity
bad
fuck fuck!
happened in Palestine, or something bad that Donald Trump did 3 years ago. This is just simply a response. This is what's going to happen. And so, and I think that that's probably what it's going to take for these left-wing people to realize what a bad idea what they've been doing is. Because until it starts happening to them, until they start having people that are their friends, or, you know, their, you know, like icons that they look up to, the same way people look up to Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
you know, until they start seeing those people get killed, I don't think it's really going to be real for them. And unfortunately, I think
it's
that's
really
the
real
path
now.
that we're headed down, because of the government and social media companies and every other seemingly governmental apparatus that has just completely hand-waved this problem and ignored it entirely. So,
Yeah,
the
it's
death
real
of
right
Charlie
now.
Kirk and the assassination
real.
of him should not come as a surprise to anyone.
Unfortunately.
This should be something that everybody could have expected. All you had to do is read Twitter for an hour and you could have told me this would have happened, of course. Same with Reddit. And until that core problem is addressed, you will continue to see a rapid decline in any type of social discourse. And I'm actually kind of afraid to see what's going to happen.
Speaking of being afraid, Asmongold needs security ASAP. He is a public figure that is not secure, that has been doxxed, I'm pretty sure, that, you know, people like Hassan Piker constantly call him out as supporting Trump and calling him a Nazi for that. He absolutely needs security. Like, I am scared for these people. I really am. Like, we are living in unprecedented, scary times. We really are.
Because I think it's just going to continue getting worse, and I don't see the reason for it to stop. And so anyway, I wanted to make this video because it's obviously a topic that, you know, I've been talking about this a lot for the past few years now, and I was laughed at a lot, and people were telling me it wasn't that big of a deal, and oh, they were joking.
Yeah,
Well, I saw the
right.
video. That wasn't a joke. And the reality is that those jokes and everything create a culture and an environment where the actual actions are more permissible.
He's right.
And you also have people.
It's not just permissible, it's idolized. It's idolized by these people. These people are idolizing these killers. They are supporting and directly supporting the killers, right? Are we realizing that? Like, they're happy that the killers are killing. They are saying that they deserved it because he's a Nazi, because he's Christian, because whatever the fuck. It's insane. And to be honest, why is anyone surprised? Let me show you a clip. Alright, let me show you a clip. And we'll see if you'll be surprised, alright?
If you want to have an honest conversation or a serious conversation,
This is Hassan having a conversation with a guy. Let's see what he says here. Let's see if this is irrelevant.
What is it? So, I mean, it's probably like the bleakest situation that I could imagine right now. Obviously, like, Americans theoretically, as a block of people, like average Americans, have a decent amount of power to challenge this, but they also themselves have no real reason, no real motivation for doing so, because ultimately, you know, what you said about Vietnam probably rings true. It does not affect them that much. It affects some of them psychologically, And that is about it. They don't see any material consequences from it.
Right? They say, so what they're talking about is they don't see any consequences to why they don't support Palestine.
You know, there has not been like a massive adverse reaction that could turn them against it. Like, for example, like the IRA, for example.
The IRA is a terrorist organization that was in Ireland, I believe.
Did a lot to like instill like fatigue in the British public on their government.
Right, so it was an Irish. I'm pretty sure it was an Irish terrorist group that that bombed British areas. They bombed British pubs and British places and killed civilians because they wanted to essentially fatigue the British people. They were a terrorist organization.
To try and look for some sort of solution to the troubles.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. There's nothing like it.
He's complaining that there isn't an IRA-style terrorist organization in the United States killing our royalty the same way the IRA killed the royalty in England. They're not car bombing people. He's complaining.
Anywhere, not at all.
Well,
And
there's no situation historically that has existed where the thoroughly, at least I can think of, where the captive population has been this thoroughly cleansed without any sort of material support to offer from other countries, right? Like you have no Cuban example, you have no USSR example, and the role that they might have played in the ANC's efforts to resist against the apartheid structure in South Africa. And you certainly don't have American congresspersons doing arms trafficking to Hamas in the way
Mad that they're not arms trafficking weapons to a terrorist organization.
that they did to the IRA. You
To
have
the IRA. Once again, Hassan co-signs this idea that he wants an IRA-style terrorist organization operating in America, bombing our cars, instilling fatigue into America, blackmailing and killing our politicians to get them to give money to terrorists in the Middle East. You really wonder how this goes? Like, this. What are we doing? This is a video. It's on YouTube. This is a public video on YouTube. These are a bunch of streamers that got together to say they want a terrorist organization to operate in America. What the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing? FBI? Hello? 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 What's going on? Hello?
Well, they're the ones telling me, quote, jokes. They're talking around, just, directly, saying that this is a bad thing and it shouldn't be tolerated for any reason. You have, I don't want to go through a bunch of different names, but anybody, this is the way I look at it, I'm just going to make a categorical judgment here.
All right.
Is that any content creator or anybody like this who has been advocating for violence against the person in an extrajudicial way. I'm not talking about trying people who they disagree with for treason.
Agreed.
This is advocating for the judicial process to be used against people they disagree with. I think that's fine. But whenever you have people that are saying things like 8647, or anybody who's advocating for any form of extrajudicial justice, extrajudicial justice, you have to realize that all of those people, I think, have made themselves acceptable.
Alright, maybe later.
There's a lot, millions of people.
Not like acceptable. I'm just clarifying because I assume this is not acceptable that you should go kill those guys. Acceptable that the eyes of a radicalized guy.
Wow, that scared the fuck out of me.
I'm pretty sure that's what he means.
People out there nowadays that see that, and I think that should be extremely worrying for them. It should be terrifying.
Yeah.
But the reality is that they have created that environment themselves.
He's right.
Through their own actions, through their behavior,
he's right.
and through their own words. You reap what you sow. And I think that things are about to get a whole lot worse. So anyway, guys, I wanted to make this video and talk about it. And that's about all I've got to say. So I hope to be back soon. I'll record videos when I can, here and there, but for the most part, as I said before, my dad has had so many really serious issues going on. I need to devote my full attention to making sure that he's healthy and taken care of. And so, as much as I look forward to streaming, this has to take priority. I don't have a time frame. It will probably be a matter of weeks, and maybe not even that long until I'm back regularly. And so hopefully that's the case. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. Another senseless death that never needed to happen. And I think that anybody who was, talking about this and turning up the heat on any of this type of political rhetoric and discussing, or at least, flirting with the idea of political violence, I think all of those people have made themselves acceptable targets in all of the worst ways possible. And I don't think that this is a good thing either. But I think it's